Mi Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego. Amen. That's the only prayer I know in Polish. And well, it's not exactly a prayer, it's just the blessing, the sign of the cross, a preface to any prayer you might say. But my parents knew every prayer and could say them in Polish. My parents, born 1917 and 1918, were born of Polish immigrants. So their first language was Polish. Now their parents, my grandparents, my two babcis and my two dziadzius, came to this country at the turn of the century, right around 1900. My grandmother's 16 years old, my grandfather's in their early 20s, with $25 in their pocket, a satchel that they were carrying, and the only other things they brought with them were their culture, traditions, their language, and their religion. And they passed all of that on to my parents, their children, and especially the religion. Now, my parents, well, they were religious. They followed those 10 commandments as if they were etched in stone. Yeah, they never strayed from those commandments. My mother knew every single saint that graced those stained glass windows at St. Valentine's, and she prayed to each and every one of them. You know, I might be praying to St. Teresa, and she might be busy. So I'll have to say a prayer to St. Catherine, and just to be sure, St. Michael, St. Stephen, St. Anthony. Yeah. And St. Anthony, he was the patron saint of our family. My oldest brother was named Anthony, and my middle name, as well as my two brothers, our middle names are Anthony. St. Anthony, the patron saint of lost things, lost causes. And I remember the day that my dad prayed to St. Anthony. Now, my dad did not believe in credit. No, never had a credit card in his life. He paid everything with cash. And he had a great big thick wallet filled with cash because, well, he made lots of transactions in our business, the store. The store. That's another story. But whether it was down in Newark, in that section of Newark, the bowels of Newark with cobblestone streets, I could still feel those cobblestones and hear them bum, 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 as my dad drove his station wagon to buy fruits and vegetables in that section of Newark, or the meat market where he went and bought a great big side of beef. He would just pay in cash. When he traded in his station wagon, greenbacks. So the day he lost that wallet, well, he was beside himself. And I could see him kneeling down in our kitchen, saying a prayer to St. Anthony, going about his work. And don't you know, St. Anthony must have been listening, because his wallet showed up later that day. Now, my parents passed on some of the stuff they got from their parents and their parents before them, but not a real lot. The language, no. I learned a few words so I could help those Polish customers in our business, the store, but I didn't know too much other than dziękuję, jak się masz, and masła meant butter, and mleko meant milk. And the religion, well, some of it stuck, but a lot of it didn't. The dogma part didn't. What did stick was the religious part of my parents' lives that they practiced daily, the way they lived their lives. I'll give you an example. I'm going to take you back to 1957. May 1st, 1957. I am awakened with a kiss, a hug, and a happy birthday, my mother. This is a special day for you. Yeah, you're going to bake a cake. My mother laughed. I will bake a cake. Oh, and by the way, when my mother baked a cake, it wasn't this, Duncan Hines and Betty Crocker crap. No, no, no. She gathered flour and eggs and butter and cream and vanilla extract and confectionery sugar. Yeah, you've never tasted a cake like my mother made. My mother said, I'll bake a cake, but listen, today's an important day, an important birthday, because you're 7 years old and you have now reached the age of reason. I didn't know what that was, but she explained, I won't be with you every day to help you make decisions, to help you decide what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. It's going to be up to you to decide. And then she said something that caught me off guard. But you're going to have someone with you every day, all the time, to help you make those decisions. Oh man, this was going to be a great birthday. They're going to get me one of them butlers or maids like I seen on TV. You know, Hazel? My mother laughed. No, just listen to me. Right here on this shoulder, and she tapped me on my right shoulder. There will always be a little angel. I looked. I fully expected to see this little white angel dressed in white, with a golden halo and wings sprouting out of his back. My mother laughed. No, you'll never be able to see that angel. But he will always be there, whispering right into this ear, trying to help you to decide what's right, what's wrong, to tell you to be good, not bad. I wasn't quite old enough for this metaphor, but she continued. Now listen, on this shoulder right here, there will always be a little devil. Well, didn't I jump? And again, I expected to see this little guy dressed in red and black with fiery eyeballs, horns sticking out of his head, a pitchfork jumping up and down on my shoulder. My mother laughed. No, you'll never be able to see him, but I got to tell you, he's always going to be there, trying to tempt you, to get you to be naughty, to be bad. And it's going to be up to you to decide who you want to listen to. Now, I wish I could tell you that I always listened to this guy over here. Yeah, no. No, it doesn't happen that way in life, no. But I got to tell you this. There have been many times in my life when I had to make decisions and I wasn't sure which way to go. And that's when I heard my mother's voice help me to make the right decision and to listen to this guy. Now, I'd also like to tell you about two traditions that came down from my parents and from their parents before them. And from their parents before them, these traditions go back centuries. Every Christmas Eve, we celebrated the evening feast called Valia. And when I was young, it was my grandmothers who would say the grace before the meal in Polish. And when they left and my siblings and I and our children we gathered at my mother and father's home. And it was my mother who led us in that prayer in Polish. But before the prayer, there was another tradition. She would hand each and every one of us a piece of opłatek. Now, an opłatek is a rectangular, thin wafer blessed by the priest. It's made of unleavened flour. It's the same material that the Holy Communion wafer is made from. And we would take that opłatek and gather in the living room where all the guests were gathered. And we would, well, it was like a meet and greet almost. We would go up to every single person there and express a wish, a hope, a blessing, a prayer. And for the children, it sometimes was very simple. I'll show you. I have that piece of opotic in my hand, and oh, Scotty, hey Scotty, and I offer him that opotic, and he knows what to do. He chips off a piece of mine and he puts it in his mouth, and I take a chip of his and put it in my mouth. And then I say to him, Scotty, I hope you make a lot of goals in soccer this year. Thanks, Uncle Ken, and I hope you have a lot of good kids in your class at school this year. And of course, with the adults, the blessings and the wishes were much more serious, about good health, good fortune, joy, peace, love. And then we would sit down, but before my mother said grace, before we dove into those homemade sauerkraut, cheese, potato, pierogis, and that homemade soup that we called borscht. It was a mushroom borscht, mushrooms that had to come from Poland. That's when my mother would say grace. And she would say it in Polish. But my mother would also tag on another prayer. Not always, but sometimes. And that prayer was the Hail Mary. Now, the Hail Mary is a prayer that's been translated to every language in the world. As I'm speaking right now, it's being read, recited, prayed thousands and thousands of times. And it was a special prayer for my mother because, well, her name was Mary. And I should tell you, as a little aside, that, well, on the day that I was born, I was a great disappointment to my mother. You see, I was born on May 1st, 1950. May 1st, the celebratory day of our Blessed Mother. Now, how my mother and father arranged for me to be born on May 1st, I don't know. But I was. And my mother, after having two naughty boys, she was sure that this baby was going to be a sweet, beautiful little girl. And she even had a name picked out. Mary. Yeah, I was supposed to be Mary. But when I came along, well, my older brother Antosh, Anthony, he says, I like the name Kenny. Name him Kenny. And so that's how I got my name. So what I'd like to do for you now is this. It's Vigilia, Christmas Eve, and my mother is saying grace in Polish, and she's adding on the Hail Mary. So I'm going to channel my mother's religion, her sweetness, her kindness, her gentleness, her love, and pass on that prayer. I'll do my best to tell it the way she might have told it on Christmas Eve. Mi Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego. Amen. Zdrowaś Mario, łaski pełna, Pan z Tobą, błogosławionaś Ty między i błogosławiony owoc żywota Twojego Jezus. Święta Mario, Matko Boża, módl się za nami, grzesznymi teraz i w godzinie śmierci naszej. Amen. Mi Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego. Amen. From me to you, from my mother to me, from my mother before her, her mother, and all my ancestors behind me, the Hail Mary.